Hello everyone. Today I'll be solving Array 2 in the quest series for Array 1 level questions. You could refer to the first video which I've uploaded. Let's solve the first question for the day. Set mismatch. You have a set of integer s which originally contains all the numbers from 1 to n. Unfortunately, due to some error, one of the numbers in s got duplicated to another number in the set, which results in repetition of one number and loss of another number. You are given an integer array nums representing the data status of this set after the error. Find the number that occurs twice and the number that is missing and return them in the form of an array. Okay, so we have been given with an array called nums and then it has numbers from 1 to n. But then one number has got repeated and then one number is missing. So basically, we have to return that particular number which has occurred twice and also the number which is missing. Let's understand by this example 1, 2, 2, 4. So the number which is repeated twice is 2 and then the number which is missing is 3. So we are returning 2 and 3. So we have to return in the form of an array. Think about the answer. I'll solve in 10 seconds. So let's solve this question and by part. Now there are two things which we are supposed to do. We have to find the number which occurs twice and also the number that is missing. First, let's find number which occurs twice. Okay. So for that, a simple approach, what could you think of is sorting it. So let's sort. Start begin. Nums dot end. So now we have sorted it, and then let's also call write the variables. We can call it duplicates, and then we can initialize it to 0, and then int miss is also 0. Now for int I is equal to 1, I is less than nums.size I plus plus. Now, how do you check if element has occurred twice or not when you've sorted it? You just have to compare the current element with the next element. That's it. So if nums of I is equal to nums of I minus 1, then what? Duplicate is equal to nums of I. And then now we have found the duplicates. Now we have to find the missing number. So for that, what do we have to do? We can set up a frequency vector and then we increment the counter if we have found it, or else it would remain 0, and at the end whichever element has the frequency vector as 0, then that's the missing one, and then finally we can return it. Okay, now I'll be writing the code for the same thing which I just now mentioned. Vector int, we'll call it frequency, and then it's nums of size plus 1 comma 0. Why is it plus 1 comma 0? Because we have to go till n, right? And also in the vectors it's 0 index, so that's why we have it n plus 1. Because say for example, if we have till 1 to n, say n is equal to 3, then here it's 0 index, so we can, if we have till 4, then we can go from 0 1 2 3, right? So that's how the number 3 will be having as fourth index, so that's why nums of size plus 1. And then here what do we do? For int we can I in nums, okay, and then frequency of I plus plus. Now here we are, see, we have initialized it to 0, and then whenever we find a number, we increment its frequency in the frequency array. And then what do? We have to just basically loop the entire frequency vector, and then whichever has the frequency as 0, then we'll be returning that. Will be giving the value of missing to that particular value, and then we'll be returning it. So for int I is equal to 1, I is less than nums dot size I plus plus. If if frequency of I is equal to 0, so miss is equal to I, and then we just have to return duplicate comma miss. So this is the code, and then let's see if it works. There is some error here. Okay, so if we initialize this as 1, I guess this error will be solved. Still, expected is 2. If frequency of I is equal to 0, duplicate comma miss. Just a second. Yeah, so the mistake I've made is I'm not making it, I've strictly made it lesser. So if I make it less than or equal to nums of size, I guess it solves now. Yeah. And then when we submit it, yeah. So this are all the test cases. So basically, first we find the thing which occurs twice by sorting it, and then if the current element equals the next element, and also missing, we find the missing by having a frequency array, and then whichever has 0, we return it, and then make sure as it's still n, you make it less than or equal to. So that's the question number 1, and now let's go to question number 2. How many numbers are smaller than the current number? Given the array nums, for each nums of I, find out how many numbers in the array are smaller than it. That is, for each nums I, you have to count the number of valid j's such that j is not equal to I and nums of j is lesser than nums of I. Return the answer in an array. Okay, so here you've been given with an array nums, and then you have to basically return an output which is also an array, wherein for this particular element you have to see how many elements is it greater than. For example, 8 is greater than 1, 8 is greater than 2, and 2 and 3. So totally 8 is greater than 4 elements. So basically you will be having 4 as the first in the 0 index for the output array. And for 1, we don't have any element which is smaller than 1. So basically we return 0. So for 2 we have 1 1, so we you return 1, and then for 2 also we have 1 1, and then for 3 we have 1 2 2. So we basically have 3 elements, so we return 3. So this is the array we have to return. Same way for this example as well, there are like two numbers which are below 6, so we have 5 and 4, we return 2, and then for 5 there's only one number, that's 4, so we return 1, and then for 4 there are 0 elements, and for 8 it has 3 elements. So this is the question. Think about it, how to code this question. You can even think of it's a very brute force approach, wherein what do we do? First we take n, int n is equal to num star size. Okay, and then we can go with I is equal to 0, I is less than n, I plus plus. See, since we have to like count each time, let's call a count variable in count is equal to 0, and then for int j is equal to 0, j is less than n, j plus plus. If nums of I is greater than nums of j, what do? We do the count plus plus. See, and then this condition is taken care by this particular thing only. If we had equal to, then we should have had one more condition of I is not equal to j, but then when we are telling it's strictly greater than it, so even this condition gets satisfied. And then we have count plus plus, and then we should call a new vector. See, because since we have to return the answer in an array, let's call one more vector int answer. And then see, now we have the count value, right? After coming out, we have to do the answer dot push back. What do you have to push back? You have to push back the count, and then you return the this is the output. Okay, so now you return the return answer. Easy question. Oh, it's all the test case, I believe. Yeah. So it has solved all the 103 test cases. Now we can move ahead to the next question. Find all numbers disappeared in an array. Given an array nums of n integers where nums of I is in the range 1 to n, return an array of all the integers in the ranges 1 to n that do not appear in nums. Okay. So basically, we've been given with an array called nums, where the nums of I is in the range of 1 to n. We and there are few numbers which are missing. We basically have to return those numbers which are not there in this particular array. For example, there's 1, there's 2 which is repeated twice, because some numbers have to repeat, right, in order to take up the spaces of these numbers. So we have 2, we have 3, we have 4, but then we don't have 5. That's why we have it in the output. And then we don't have 6, but then we have 7 here, we have 8 here. So 5 6 is the thing which we have to return. And here as well, here there's only one because it's still 1 to n, so this should be 2, so the missing number is 2. This is the question. Think of the answer or the approach in like 10-15 seconds, and I'll get started with coding it. We recently solved a question on how to find the frequency, right? So we can use the same thing here as well. What do we do? Int n is equal to nums dot size, and then we should have a frequency vector. That's how you find out, right? How many times it has been repeated. But here you basically don't need how many times it has been repeated, but then the frequency of 0 would tell us that the number is not repeated at all. So that's why we are having the frequency construction here. We have called the frequency, and then again it's n plus 1 comma 0. Why is it n plus 1? Because it's from 1 to n and the vectors are 0 index. Now for int n in nums, frequency of n plus plus. And then now we have a frequency vector which has the values of how many times it has repeated. Now we basically have to just return all the elements which has frequency of 0 in this particular frequency vector. Again, how do we do that? We just have to loop it, and then again we call since we have to return an array, let's initialize frequency in answer, and then for int I is equal to 1, I is less than or equal to, this is the mistake which I made in the question, so let's not do it again. Then I plus plus, if frequency of phi is equal to 0, then what do we have to do? We have to push it back, right? So answer dot push underscore back. What do we have to push back? We have to push back I, and then after the thing we just have to return the answer. So this should work for this question. Yeah, it worked. And then let's see if all the test cases get passes. Yeah, so 35 but 35 we have solved, test cases solved, and then we cleared even the level 2 in the array thing in the quest series. Thank you.